The royal hall of the Zareth Empire was made of crystal and silver, glowing softly under the light of two suns. Thousands of nobles and soldiers stood in silence, waiting for their queen. The air was heavy, as if the whole palace knew something terrible was about to happen. Then the great doors opened and Queen Lyra of Zareth entered. Her tall figure glowed in her silver armor. Her eyes burned like living stars. Every step she took echoed across the marble floor. Her voice, when it came, made the very walls tremble. "Who got my daughter pregnant?" she shouted. The hall went silent. Nobody dared to move. The sound of her anger rolled through the air like thunder. The nobles bowed their heads. Even the soldiers looked away, afraid to meet her gaze. Behind her stood Princess Lyra, her daughter, the jewel of the empire. Her pale blue skin shimmered softly, and her long hair floated like silver mist. But her eyes were full of fear. She held her hands over her belly protectively, as if guarding something precious. "Answer me!" the queen roared again. "Which traitor touched royal blood? Which fool dared to defile the house of Zareth?" Her voice broke through the silence again, sharp as a blade. The nobles glanced at each other in panic. None of them spoke. None of them even breathed. Lyra's lips trembled. "Mother," she whispered softly, "please, do not speak." The queen snapped. "You have shamed your crown, your family, your people. You will tell me who did this." Tears welled up in Lyra's eyes. Her voice cracked. "He did not harm me, Mother. He loved me." The queen's face froze. For a moment, the mighty ruler seemed confused, as if she couldn't understand the word her daughter had just spoken. "Loved?" she repeated slowly, as though the sound was foreign. Love was not something the Zareth Empire believed in. They valued power, loyalty, and duty. Love was for weak creatures, for those without purpose. To hear it spoken by her daughter, a princess, was unthinkable. "Who?" the queen demanded again, her voice quieter now but filled with deadly fury. "Who dares to claim love with my bloodline?" The court waited in silence. Nobody dared to speak. The tension grew thicker with each heartbeat. Then, from the back of the hall, the sound of footsteps echoed. Slow, steady, each step louder than the last. Every alien noble turned their head. What they saw made them whisper in disbelief. A human man was walking forward. He was tall but looked fragile compared to the Zareth warriors. His skin was pale, his hair dark and messy. His clothes were simple, nothing royal, nothing noble. He had no armor, no weapon, no rank, only calm eyes filled with quiet strength. His name was Ethan Cole. He was a mechanic from Earth, a simple man who had come to Zareth Prime as part of a human engineering team. He fixed their machines, repaired their ships, and lived quietly among them. To the nobles, he was less than nothing, but to one person in this empire, he had become everything. Ethan walked until he stood before the queen's throne. The guards moved their spears toward him, ready to strike. But he didn't flinch. He looked up at the queen and said in a calm voice, "It was me." Gasps filled the hall. Nobles shouted in disbelief. "A human?" one cried. "Impossible," said another. "This is an insult to the Empire." But Ethan didn't back down. He stood tall even when the guards pressed their weapons close to his chest. Queen Lyra's eyes burned brighter. "You?" she said slowly. "You dare stand before me and claim such shame?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I am not ashamed, Your Majesty." Her voice turned cold as ice. "You, an animal from a dying planet, claim to touch the air of Zareth?" "I didn't touch her," Ethan said softly. "I loved her." The hall went dead silent again. Even the guards froze. The word love seemed to echo endlessly around the room. Lyra took a step forward, tears falling down her cheeks. "Mother, please. He is telling the truth. He saved me." The queen's head turned sharply toward her daughter. "Saved you? From what?" "From death," Lyra said. "When the pirate fleets attacked my convoy, he stayed behind. He fought for me even when our guards ran. He was wounded, but he never left me. He carried me through fire. I owe him my life. The queen's lips tightened. For a brief moment, something flickered in her expression, a hint of doubt, of pain, but it was gone as quickly as it came. You disgrace your bloodline, she whispered coldly. And you, she turned her gaze back to Ethan. You disgrace your kind. You dare to speak of love as if it means something. You will both face judgment for this crime. Ethan looked straight into her eyes. If love is a crime, then I accept any punishment. But please don't punish her. Elira's sobs broke the silence again. Mother, please. But the queen raised her hand, silencing her. Enough. Guards, take him. 2 soldiers grabbed Ethan by the arms. He didn't resist. He just looked at Elira and smiled sadly. It's all right, he said softly. Everything will be all right. As he was dragged away, the queen turned her face toward the throne, hiding her trembling hands. She had faced wars, assassins, and betrayal. But never before had she faced something like this, something that made her heart feel both furious and afraid. Love. A human's love. And deep down, though she would never admit it, something about that word unsettled her more than any weapon ever could. The cold cell was silent except for the faint hum of energy walls. Ethan sat on the hard metal bench, his wrists bound by glowing restraints. His body ached, and blood had dried on his shirt from the struggle. But his mind was calm. He stared at the faint reflection of his face on the energy barrier. He could still hear the queen's voice echoing in his head, furious, sharp, and full of disgust. But what hurt him most wasn't her anger. It was the look in Elira's eyes when the guards dragged him away. The pain, the fear, and the love. Outside, the royal city buzzed with rumors. A human man, one of the lesser species, had touched the royal line. To the Zareth, it was unthinkable. To the humans working on Zareth Prime, it was terrifying. Some said Ethan would be executed by dawn. Others said he would be erased. His memory, his records, his name. Inside the queen's chamber, Lyra stood alone. The lights were dim, and the silence felt heavy. Her daughter's words still haunted her. He saved me. He loved me. Love. Such a small word. Such dangerous power. She turned toward the window where the twin suns burned in the distance. She had ruled for decades, crushed rebellions, defeated empires. Yet here she was, shaken by a single human's courage. Elira entered quietly, her eyes red from crying. Mother, she whispered, bowing slightly. The queen's tone was icy. You disobeyed me by coming here. I had to, Elira said softly. You will kill him. Lyra turned sharply. He deserves worse. He brought shame upon you, upon me, upon our people. No, Elira cried, stepping forward. He brought me life. He made me understand what it means to feel, to hope, to care. The queen's face hardened. You speak like a human now. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, Elira replied quietly. Because humans still believe in love. They still fight for it. Lyra's hands trembled for just a moment before she hid them behind her back. You are a princess, not a poet. You are not meant to fall in love. You are meant to rule. Elira's voice broke. Then I don't want to rule, not if ruling means destroying him. The queen's expression froze. Her daughter's defiance cut deeper than any blade. She had seen countless enemies challenge her, but none had ever wounded her heart like this. Enough, she said softly but coldly. You have made your choice. Now I will make mine. That night the great hall was filled once more. The nobles gathered to witness judgment. Ethan was brought in by guards, chains clinking with every step. He looked weak but unbroken. His eyes searched the crowd until they found Elira, standing behind her mother. She looked at him with trembling lips, her hands resting on her small round belly. Queen Lyra stood before the throne, her crown glinting in the pale light. Her voice echoed across the chamber. Ethan Cole of Earth, she began. You stand, accused of breaking sacred law. of touching royal blood, of defying the order of the Zareth Empire. What do you say in your defense? Ethan looked at her calmly. I don't deny it, Your Majesty. But I didn't break your law out of pride or deceit. I did it because I loved your daughter. Gasps filled the hall again. The nobles muttered in disbelief. Some laughed cruelly. Others shouted for his death. But Ethan's words carried across the noise like a quiet fire, burning through the cold. Queen Lyra stepped down from her throne. Her silver eyes locked on his. You speak of love as if it were something noble. Do you think your words can erase what you have done? No, Ethan said softly. But they can remind you what it means to feel. To care for someone more than yourself. The Queen's face darkened. Humans are reckless. You live short lives and burn yourselves with foolish emotions. You think love makes you strong, but it makes you weak. Ethan met her gaze steadily. Maybe, but weakness is what makes us human. It's what makes life worth living. I know I'll die someday, maybe even today. But if I die knowing I loved her and she loved me, then my life was worth it. The hall went silent. Even the nobles couldn't find their voices. For a brief moment, even the Queen's heart felt something strange. An ache she hadn't felt in years. She turned away, hiding her expression. You will not be executed, she said finally. But you will face the trial of honor. The word sent ripples through the court. The trial of honor was an ancient Zareth tradition. 3 deadly challenges meant to test the truth of one's soul. No outsider had ever survived it. If you survive, the Queen continued, you will prove your worth to the Empire. If you fail, your name and your child will be erased from existence. Elira gasped. Mother, please. But the Queen raised her hand. Silence. If he truly loves you, let him prove it. Let his strength, his courage, and his truth decide his fate. Ethan stood quietly. His heart pounded, but he didn't look afraid. He turned toward Elira and smiled gently. Then I'll prove it. The guards led him away, and the hall remained silent for a long time after he was gone. The Queen returned to her throne, her expression unreadable. But inside her heart, a storm raged. For the first time in centuries, she didn't know if she was doing the right thing. In her mind, she saw the face of the human, bruised, bloodied, but unbroken, and she whispered to herself almost too softly to hear, let us see, if love is stronger than fear. Ethan was led through the twisting halls of the palace into a chamber that seemed larger than the tallest tower. The walls shimmered with energy, and the floor pulsed beneath his feet as if the building itself were alive. He had heard stories of the trial of honor, but nothing could prepare him for the reality. A booming voice filled the chamber. Ethan Cole of Earth, you stand accused. Your life and the life of your child rests on your courage, your strength, and your truth. Survive the 3 trials or perish. Fail and all will be erased. Ethan swallowed hard. His heart pounded. But as he looked at the faint reflection of Elira in the crystal doors, he felt something stronger than fear. Purpose. He was not just fighting for himself. He was fighting for her, for their child, for the tiny spark of life that now existed between worlds. The first trial began instantly. The floor shook violently, and a massive creature emerged from the shadows. It was a Zareth war beast, taller than 2 humans, covered in thick dark scales and jagged spines. Its glowing eyes fixed on him, and it let out a roar that made the chamber tremble. Ethan's first instinct was to run, but there was nowhere to hide. He had no weapon except a simple metal rod that had been handed to him. The beast lunged, its claws tearing the air with deadly speed. Ethan ducked just in time. Feeling the wind slice past his head, he rolled to the side, catching his balance, his heart hammering. He remembered Elira's voice in his mind. He saved me. He never left me. Drawing courage from her words, he struck the beast with the metal rod, hitting its glowing underbelly. Sparks flew as the creature roared in pain. It lunged again, faster this time. Ethan ducked, rolled, and jabbed at its leg, breaking a joint. The creature stumbled, giving him just enough space. With one final, desperate move, Ethan climbed onto a nearby pillar, leapt onto the beast's back, and drove the rod into a weak spot behind its armor plates. The war beast let out a final scream and collapsed, shaking the chamber violently. Breathing heavily, Ethan stood tall. He had survived the first trial, not with brute strength alone, but with courage, quick thinking, and determination. The second trial began immediately. The chamber darkened and illusions appeared before him. Suddenly, he was back on the pirate ship that had attacked Elira's convoy. He saw her screaming as fire consumed the deck. His friends, his crew, burned and fell, calling for help he couldn't give. Ethan's chest tightened. He felt real pain, grief, fear, and helplessness. The illusions shifted. Now he saw himself alone in space, drifting with no hope, and Elira crying as the unborn child seemed to vanish before his eyes. Every step forward felt impossible. Every breath was heavy with sorrow. But Ethan gritted his teeth. He remembered Elira's words. He fought for me even when our guards ran. Through the illusion, he called out, "I am here. I will not leave you. I will not fail you." The images began to fade. The illusions could not break him because his heart was true. His love and determination for Elira and their child acted like a shield. When the chamber cleared, Ethan was on his knees, breathing heavily, tears streaming down his face, but alive, finally. The third trial appeared, the trial of truth. The queen herself entered the chamber. She stood tall, her silver eyes gleaming with judgment. "Tell me, human," she said softly. "Why risk everything? Your life, your child, your kind, why?" Ethan looked her directly in the eyes. He felt no fear, only honesty. Because love is not about power. It is not about law or fear. It is about protecting someone with everything you have. I risked my life for her because she is my family now. Because she and our child are worth everything. I will fight, bleed, or die to keep them safe. That is the truth. The queen's face remained unreadable. Her eyes, however, softened slightly. She had ruled for centuries, yet no one had ever spoken to her like this. This human, fragile and different, held a strength she had never seen, a strength born not of might but of the heart. For the first time in her life, she questioned her own beliefs. She had conquered empires, crushed armies, and faced death countless times, but she had never faced something like true courage born of love. Ethan fell to his knees before her, exhausted, bleeding, and trembling. He had survived battles, illusions, and the judgment of the greatest empire in the galaxy, and through it all his love had never wavered. The chamber remained silent for a long, tense moment. Then finally the queen spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "You survive. Ethan Cole of Earth, but know this, your trials are not over. The future is still uncertain. One misstep and everything you cherish can be taken from you. You are not yet safe, not yet." Ethan nodded, his chest heaving. Relief, exhaustion, and hope flooded through him. He looked toward the hidden crystal door where Elira waited, tears and fear mixing on her face. "I will not fail," he whispered, not to the queen but to himself, and to the life that depended on him. For a human, this was more than survival. It was proof that courage, love, and sacrifice could stand against the mightiest empire in the galaxy. It was proof that one heart could change everything. And for the first time, even Queen Lyra felt something stir in her chest, a tiny, unexplainable respect for the human who dared to stand before her, unbroken, and speak the language of the heart. Ethan's hands were still trembling as he was led back into the palace courtyard. The twin suns were setting, casting long golden shadows across the crystal floors. He had survived the first trials, the beast, the illusions, and the trial of truth. But exhaustion weighed on him like a mountain. Every step hurt, every breath was heavy, yet he held his head high, driven by something stronger than fear, love. Elira was waiting at the gates, her silver hair glowing in the fading sunlight. Her eyes widened when she saw him, and for a moment she forgot to breathe. "Ethan," she whispered. Her voice was shaky, but it carried relief, hope, and fear all at once. Ethan staggered forward, smiling weakly. "I told you, I'll never leave you." She ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. He held her tightly, feeling her warmth, her heartbeat, and the life growing inside her. The child they were bringing into the universe was fragile, yet it was stronger than anything Ethan had ever known, stronger than any Zareth warrior, stronger than any beast he had faced. But the peace was short-lived. The queen's voice echoed across the courtyard, cold and commanding. "Human, you have survived the trials, but do not think this spares you from judgment. Your life is granted, for now. The Empire watches. Every move you make will be tested." Ethan nodded, not intimidated. He looked at the queen, standing tall on the balcony above, her silver eyes unreadable. "I understand, Your Majesty. I will honor your rules, but I will protect her, no matter what." For a brief moment, something flickered in Queen Lyra's eyes, a memory from long ago, A memory of her own youth, when she had once loved and lost, passed through her mind. She had never shared that side of herself with anyone, yet here was a human, bold and simple, reminding her of feelings she had buried centuries ago. The palace guards escorted Ethan to a small chamber where he could rest, but sleep did not come easily. Every moment he thought of Elira, of the life they were building together, and of the dangers that still lurked in the galaxy. The next morning, Elira visited him. She sat by his side, holding his hand tightly. "You didn't have to face those trials alone," she said softly. "You could have given up. You could have fled, but you didn't." Ethan smiled faintly. "Giving up never felt like an option. If I had, I would have lost you and our child before we even began. Love doesn't let you quit." Her eyes shimmered with tears. "I'm so scared, Ethan. My mother, she can't fully trust you. She will watch us, control us, even try to separate us." He took her hand and held it against his chest. "Let her watch. Let her test me. I will prove that I am worthy. Not because I am strong like her warriors, but because my heart is true. I will fight for you, Elira, every single day." The weeks that followed were tense. The Zareth court observed every interaction, every word, every glance between Ethan and Elira. Some nobles whispered that the human had survived the trials because of sheer luck. Others argued that perhaps there was something divine in him, a courage and heart that could rival the strongest of Zareth. Queen Lyra rarely spoke to Ethan directly. When she did, her voice was firm and icy. But each time she studied him closely, she noticed how he treated Elira with care and respect, how he never tried to take advantage of the Empire's leniency, how his love was pure and unwavering. One evening, the queen summoned him to the balcony overlooking the twin suns. "Human," she said, her voice quieter than usual, "why do you risk so much for someone so fragile?" Ethan looked out at the horizon, thinking of Elira, thinking of their child. "Because love is not about fragility," he said softly. "It's about choosing someone over yourself. It's about giving your life for someone who cannot fight for themselves. I may be human and I may be weak compared to your warriors, but my heart is strong." For a long moment, the queen said nothing. Then she turned away, hiding a hint of emotion she had not felt in decades. Ethan could not see it, but he had planted a seed, a tiny understanding in her heart. Days later, Ethan and Elira walked in the palace gardens. The crystal flowers glowed under the sunlight, and alien birds sang strange melodies. They spoke quietly, dreaming of the future they wanted, the life they wanted for their child. "Do you think she will ever truly accept us?" Elira asked, her hand resting on her belly. Ethan smiled gently. "I don't know. But I do know this: we have survived impossible trials. We have faced fear, pain, and judgment, and we are still standing. Whatever comes next, we will face it together." Elira leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Ethan, more than I can say." "I love you too," he whispered. "And I always will." Far above them, in her throne room, Queen Lyra watched silently. She saw the strength of the human's heart, the truth in his actions, and the bond between mother and child. Something shifted within her, a recognition that courage and love could exist beyond her understanding, beyond her laws, and even beyond her empire. And for the first time, she wondered if perhaps in this fragile human, there was hope for something greater than power, a hope that the future of the Zareth Empire might not only survive but thrive, with love at its center. Months passed since Ethan had survived the trial of honor. The palace, once tense and cold, now carried a subtle warmth whenever Elira was near him. The princess's belly had grown, a gentle reminder of the life they were bringing into the galaxy, a life that was neither entirely human nor entirely Zareth, but something miraculous. Ethan spent every day at Elira's side. He helped her with simple tasks, carried her when the palace stairs became too steep, and whispered to her and their unborn child. "I promise, little one," he would say softly, "I will protect you no matter what. You will know love, and nothing in this galaxy will ever take that from you." The Zareth nobles watched with mixed emotions. Some whispered of disgrace, claiming the human had corrupted royal blood. Others observed in awe, noting how Ethan's courage, loyalty, and care surpassed many of their own kind. He had survived the trials, but more importantly, he had won something that even warriors could not earn: the unwavering trust of the princess. Queen Lyra remained distant, her silver eyes observing from the shadows. She had not yet spoken to Ethan directly since the trials ended. The mother in her worried, yet the ruler could not ignore the undeniable truth. The human had faced danger, judgment, and illusion, and emerged stronger than many Zareth warriors. Finally, the day came. Elira's labor began in the palace's birthing chamber, a grand room filled with soft glowing lights and alien flowers that released gentle fragrances to calm the mother. Ethan held her hand, his eyes filled with both worry and fierce determination. "You're going to be fine," he whispered, his thumb brushing her cheek. "I'm here. I won't leave." Elira clenched his hand tightly. "I trust you," she gasped. "Please, help our child come safely." The labor was long and exhausting. Ethan stayed by her side the entire time, whispering encouragements and prayers, offering gentle touches and reminding her of the life waiting for them. Sweat dripped from his brow, his body aching, but he did not falter. He knew that everything, their love, their trials, their future, was worth this moment. And then, finally, a cry echoed through the chamber. It was a sound that shook the hearts of everyone present, a tiny, fragile voice, yet full of life and promise. The midwives handed the baby to Elira. She held her child close, tears streaming down her glowing cheeks. "It's perfect," she whispered, voice trembling with joy. Look at her, Ethan." Ethan leaned closer. The child's skin was soft and pale like his, yet faintly luminous like the Zareth. Her small fingers grasped his hand instinctively, and her eyes, bright and intelligent, looked into his with recognition, as if she already knew the love that had created her. Elira smiled through tears. She's everything we dreamed of." The room fell silent. The nobles and attendants could not look away. This child, born of two worlds, was more than an heir. She was a symbol, a living proof that courage, love, and determination could defy even the strictest traditions of the galaxy's most powerful empire. Queen Lyra entered the chamber silently. The child reached out a tiny hand and touched her silver armor. The queen's expression faltered, and for the first time she allowed herself to feel something purely human, softness, warmth, and awe. "This child," she said, her voice almost a whisper, "is not a mistake." Ethan stepped forward, bowing respectfully. "Your Majesty, we will honor the Empire and we will protect her. I promise." The queen regarded him silently, her eyes lingering on his tired but unbroken face. "You have proven something unusual for a human. Strength, courage, love, perhaps even wisdom." She looked down at the tiny baby. "You may stay, but understand this. Our galaxy is not kind to those who are weak. Protect them well, human." Ethan nodded, his chest tight with emotion. "I will. I swear it." Elira pressed the baby close to her heart. "Mother," she said softly, "this child is not only ours. She's hope. For all of us." The queen did not respond immediately. She studied the child, studying Ethan, studying the princess. In her silence, a decision formed, not as a ruler imposing law, but as a mother recognizing life. The Empire had survived countless threats, but perhaps its greatest future now rested in a tiny hand that grasped the human's finger. The baby cooed, and Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of purpose that transcended fear, danger, or doubt. In that moment, he understood something he had always known deep down. Humanity's strength was not in technology or weapons, but in the heart, the ability to love, to sacrifice, and to stand for what is right, no matter the cost. And for the first time, Queen Lyra allowed herself a small, genuine smile. She had ruled for centuries, faced death and betrayal, yet nothing had moved her like this. She had learned something profound. Courage and love were forces that even the greatest empire could not control. And sometimes, even a human could teach a queen what it meant to be truly strong. Ethan knelt beside Elira and whispered to the baby, "Welcome to this world, little one. You are loved more than anything in the universe." Elira rested her head on his shoulder. "We did it, Ethan, together." The queen stepped back into the shadows, silent but watching. For the first time, she felt hope. Hope not just for the empire, but for something far greater. A future where love could change even the course of history. Years passed. The baby Leora grew stronger and wiser with each day. She inherited her father's humanity, curiosity, kindness, and courage, and her mother's Zareth heritage, grace, intelligence, and resilience. Everywhere she went, people paused to stare, some in awe, some in disbelief. She was proof that love between two worlds could create something extraordinary. Ethan had changed too. The once simple human mechanic had become a symbol, not just to the Zareth, but to humans and aliens alike. He had stood before an empire, survived impossible trials, and faced judgment with nothing but courage and love. And he had done it for something far bigger than himself, a family, a future, and hope. Elira and Ethan often walked hand in hand through the palace gardens, watching Leora chase the glowing crystal birds or laugh as alien butterflies fluttered around her. Their love had deepened, tested by trials and fear, yet strengthened by every moment of courage and sacrifice. One afternoon, Queen Lyra entered the gardens quietly, her silver robes catching the sunlight. She watched Leora play and then turned her gaze toward Ethan. He bowed slightly. "Your Majesty," he said respectfully. The queen studied him carefully. She had ruled for centuries, seen empires rise and fall, faced betrayal, war, and death. But Ethan had taught her something she had forgotten, that strength was not only measured in armies or power, but in courage, heart, and the willingness to stand for what you love. "You have proven yourself human, in a way I did not think possible," she said softly. "Your courage saved not only my daughter, but perhaps even my empire." Ethan shook his head. "I did not save your empire, Your Majesty. Love saved it. Hope saved it. And this little one," he gestured toward Leora, who giggled as she ran toward a crystal fountain, "is proof that the impossible is possible when we fight for what is right." The queen's eyes softened. For decades she had demanded obedience, power, and loyalty, but she had never truly understood the quiet force of love. Now, standing before a human who had faced her wrath and survived through heart alone, she felt a humility she had never known. "Perhaps I was wrong," she admitted quietly. "Love is not weakness, it can be strength greater than any army." Ethan smiled faintly. "It always has been, Your Majesty." Meanwhile, Leora climbed onto Ethan's shoulders, her tiny hands clutching his hair as she laughed with delight. Elira wrapped her arms around both of them, her heart swelling with joy and pride. Together, the three of them stood as a living testament that the universe's boundaries could be crossed, and even the most rigid rules could bend in the face of courage and love. As word of the humans' bravery and the birth of Leora spread across Zareth Prime, other humans and aliens began to question old prejudices. They saw that one man with nothing but courage and love could challenge the mightiest empire and emerge stronger. Stories were told, songs were sung, and the legend of Ethan Cole, the human who faced the queen, began to grow. Even in the halls of the empire, whispers began. Nobles who had once doubted him now spoke his name with respect. Soldiers who had witnessed his trials remembered his courage, and mothers and fathers across the planets told their children the story of a human who dared to stand for love, no matter the cost. Years later, as the twin suns set over the palace, Ethan stood by the balcony holding Elira's hand. Leora ran ahead, chasing the light of the sun on the crystal floors, laughing as only a child could. "Do you ever regret stepping forward that day?" Elira asked softly, her voice full of warmth. Ethan shook his head. "Not for a second. That day, I learned what it means to be human. I learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act in spite of it. And I learned that love can change everything." The queen watched from a distance, unseen but present. For the first time in centuries, she smiled not as a ruler commanding an empire, but as a mother and a witness to a miracle. Humanity's small, fragile hand had touched her world, and in doing so, it had reshaped it entirely. And in the quiet of that golden sunset, the galaxy seemed to pause. The story of a human who had dared to stand, a princess who had loved, and a child who symbolized hope stretched across worlds, reminding all who heard it bravery, love, and compassion were the greatest forces in the universe. Ethan lowered his head, pressing his forehead against Elira's. "We did it," he whispered. "We did," she replied, resting her hand on his chest. Together, and somewhere deep in the palace, Queen Lyra's silver eyes glimmered with pride and understanding. She had learned what the universe had tried to teach her for centuries, even the smallest. Most fragile beings can change the fate of empires. For the first time, history would not remember the wrath of a queen or the fear of an empire. It would remember a human who stepped forward when no one else dared, a human who loved, a human who proved that even the tiniest heart, filled with courage and hope, could change the stars themselves.